Welcome back to Catholic Hawk 45. I'm Anthony. And have you ever been at Mass and run into the problem of booty shorts? The woman, in this case, is crying out for some type of attention. And they want that attention not only from men, and let's not fool ourselves, ladies. You know that men are going to be looking at you. After all, we are weak in that area. But really, if you've ever watched women watch each other, they really watch each other. They look each other up and down. They see what their feminine counterpart is wearing and what kind of attention that might bring her. Maybe she's thinking, maybe I need to wear these things. How would I look in that? These are all very self-centered modes of being. And the Freemasons, by no coincidence, have been moving towards scandalizing women. If you listen to my documentary, Our Lady of America, Hieroglyphic Warfare, I go over that there and show you the proof and the evidence of this. They've been slowly undressing women for over a century. The styles have become more and more risque. Now when I flip on the news, the women on the news many times look like hookers looked in the 90s. That's where we're at. Now, strong women, on the other hand, embrace Our Lady of Fatima. And maybe many of you good women that attend the Novus Ordo are not aware exactly of really the type of modesty that Mary intends for us and the great scandal that can be caused in ways that you may not be familiar with or even understand because you're not a man. And it's your duty as a woman to protect your purity and to protect your brother's purity. And ladies, let me tell you, men are particularly weak in this department. It's a freaking minefield out there in the modern age when good Catholic men walk out and are trying to protect their eyes. Practically impossible. You're literally having to deal with things that you would prefer not to see in very short time spans repeatedly. Now, it's important to understand what the Church has taught on this point. And for you ladies that don't know, I want to start with the great stigmatist, Padre Pio, Saint Padre Pio. If you don't know about Saint Padre Pio, you need to start reading about the guy because, well, he is one of the incorruptibles. His body has still not decomposed. And he worked so many great miracles in his life, one could essentially say it was a miracle when he was not performing some miracle, although not to the extent that somebody like St. Vincent Ferreira perhaps did, but still, Padre Pio is an absolute titan. So his opinion carries a massive amount of weight. And it's not just his opinion, but this is what the Church has taught. Quote, given special guidance from heaven, St. Padre Pio, the stigmatic priest who bore the bleeding wounds of Christ in his body from 1918 until his death in 1968, refused time and again to absolve any woman, no matter how important she was, who did not wear her skirts at least 8 inches below the knee. You hear that? 8 inches below the knee. See, I would be inclined to say, just make sure the skirt is at least 3, maybe 4 inches below the knee. So when you sit down, it doesn't reveal too much, right? But Padre Pio, this titan, is saying 8 inches below the knee. Hey, I'm going to go with Padre Pio. He also insisted that they do not wear slacks. Yet this traditional guideline, due to ignorance, prejudice, enslavement to vanity or passion, has been combated so much in contemporary times. In fact, the Magisterium of the Catholic Church issued statements on modesty in 1930, 1954, and 1957, but since then has kept silent because people no longer listen. That's the exact same thing that happened with communion in the hand. It was not the Church that initiated that. The laity, priests, ignored the magisterium. They started that practice on their own. It became so widespread, the magisterium finally just, yeah, okay, whatever. Pope John Paul II, as a matter of fact, since we're talking about the rebellion of the laity here in a certain sense, Pope John Paul II wrote specific instructions to all of the bishops to be followed that no lay people were really supposed to be handing out communion. Extraordinary ministers were supposed to be just that, extraordinary, for extraordinary circumstances, not just because there's a lot of people in the church. Priests, bishops, they ignored it. Many of them ignore it to this day. But that's a side note. So, God allows us to be punished by the silence of the Magisterium today for the sins of not obeying the Magisterium when it spoke up on modesty. This is similar to the way God responded to the hardness of the hearts of the people in the Old Testament. As punishment, God did not send prophets for 400 years after the Jews had killed and rejected many of the prophets he had already sent. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, the church spoke on this, and yeah, Padre Pio said that, but you know what? They're not really moral theologians. Well, we also have Father Bruno Pelegia in 1986. He was so concerned about the sins against holy purity that he spoke out on this very fact as a moral theologian. And not only was he a theologian, he's also a doctor of sacred theology. And we have to remember, modesty in dress helps safeguard the virtue of purity and is demanded by the moral law of God. The above norms are based on this unchangeable moral law and on Christian tradition. Immodest dress is immoral and sinful and a matter for confession. We have reason to believe that many souls are now in hell because of the thoughtlessness of women and girls who dress immodestly. Out of love for Christ and His Immaculate Mother, and for the sake of others who are struggling to be pure, please dress modestly. And I'm going to link this in the show notes so you can see exactly what Father Bruno has to say about this. And look, if your daughter's wearing shorter shorts, if your wife's wearing shorter shorts, you're going to have some tough conversations. That 8 inches that Padre Pio was talking about, I guarantee you that is not just for Mass. That is not just for Mass. Our Lady of Fatima said that there are no styles in heaven. God never changes, and God insists on purity. It's time to make big changes if you have not begun to make big changes. So what are some guidelines for modesty in dress? The essential guidelines that the Holy See gave in this matter are summed up in one paragraph. Quote, "A dress cannot be called decent which is cut deeper than 2 fingers' breadth under the pit of the throat, which does not cover the arms at least to the elbows, and scarcely reaches a bit beyond the knees. Furthermore, dresses of transparent materials are improper." And I would also add to that, since we have these problems today, that dresses that are too tight, well, you haven't left much to the imagination. Dresses that, I would say pants, for instance, that women wear. I mean, if you're going to insist on wearing pants, make sure your shirt covers other things, if necessary. Make sure the pants are not skin tight. Make sure they're very loose fitting. But personally, I don't like it. I don't like pants on women. Women wearing dresses are beautiful. I'll give you an example. When my wife and I started attending the FSSP, my wife never really dressed immodestly anyway. But when we began to attend there, she started to wear dresses like Padre Pio would recommend. She, of course, would veil. And she's a very, very beautiful woman, right? We went out to eat after Mass one day. Went to the Waffle House, took the kids. And we walked in. All of the men were staring at her. All of the men were staring at her. And that made her very, very uncomfortable. And she thought, they're staring at her because she looked like a weirdo. And that's not why the men were staring at her. The men were staring at her because she was beautiful and because she was wearing attire that they are not used to seeing. You're at the Waffle House. You got women in there in short shorts, shirts cut down with everything hanging out. Men, they didn't know what to think when they saw that, because what they saw was beauty and purity and modesty. This is what Our Lady exemplifies. You can be beautiful and be modest. You can wear ribbons in your hair. You can pick out dresses that are very flattering and do not reveal too much. I mean, Our Lady is probably the most beautiful woman ever created, yet she's so modest, the perfect example of modesty. And so, strong women, if they've not heard this before and they were ignorant of it, they will be willing to immediately make these changes. Weak women will come up with excuses to continue to dress as they have always dressed. And don't think that modesty is just for women. It's for men too. There's guidelines for men as well. Let's go over those. Men should not remove their shirt and expose their body to the waist in public. Men should not wear shorts in church or tight-fitting pants. If men should feel that their clothes are too tight or immodest in any other way, they should correct this by being more modest, so as not to be an occasion whereby any of their sisters in Christ should lose their souls by unlawful desires being aroused. Less of a problem for women, but that doesn't mean men don't have an obligation as well. So, I'm going to link to this in the description box below, so you have this from Fatima.org, this release. These are the things that I learned in the FSSP. These are the things that I learned when I attended Mass there. These good priests really helped truly catechize me as a Catholic. And these are the things that we have lost being immersed in this secular, satanic society at this point in history. So I'll leave you with this. Therefore, sisters and brothers, we must remember the Apostles' exhortation that still is so timeless. Do ye all things without murmuring and hesitations, that you may be blameless and sincere children of God, without reproof, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life to my glory in the day of Christ, because I have not run in vain, nor labored in vain. God bless. We'll see you next time.